Hello and welcome back. I am 13 doing yet another video for Squirrel Dealer. Tonight we're going to be doing blue eggs. I've mentioned in the past that I've made some horrible decks that do terrible things to my opponents, and this is going to be joining the list. Playtesting with this deck, it has been slightly rough, so I'm going to reserve the right to drop at any point in time and play Narset Cannon in Pioneer, which is another one I'm pretty excited about, but also don't think it'll go great. So if you're looking for an amazing deck tonight, this probably won't be it, but if you're interested in an egg style deck, and all of you who are know who you are, then by all means feel free to enjoy the crap out of this one. Well, what we're doing tonight, eggs, golden egg exactly. This is obviously a flavor callback to the old eggs. Eggs is a style of deck where you end up dropping a bunch of artifacts that basically replace themselves, and they're kind of mana neutral. This is a little overcosted, so you can see one of the cards I'm featuring exactly in the slide is Omniscience. We're going to be running out a bunch of cheap artifacts like Navigator's Compass that aren't really that impactful, but just commit stuff to the board because Flood of Tears will return all non-land permanents to their owner's hand. And if you return 4 or more non-token permanents, then you get a permanent from your hand into the battlefield. So we're going to hopefully try to cheese into play Omniscience. We are only running one copy. It really doesn't work for this deck to run multiples, but yeah, that's the deck, is run out a bunch of cheap garbage artifacts and then try to cheese an Omniscience into play. As far as win conditions, we are rocking 3 of them next to Fate for infinite turns. Not really what I want to be going for there, but it is technically a win condition. Aetherflux Reservoir. 4 mana, whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you cast before at this turn. Obviously, with eggs, when you're casting multiple copies of a spell and casting essentially infinite cards a turn, this is just a great way to rack up life. We can cast spells like 40 times. Finally, cast an Aetherflux Reservoir, cast 1 spell, we're gaining 41 life, and then just shoot our opponent down. And if for some reason our opponent's hexproof or whatever, we can just go for the Jace Wielder of Mysteries win because we are drawing infinite cards as well as casting infinite spells. Then, last but not least, we are rocking the Narset Partervel's Days Undoing and Gyre Reach combo. As part of our eggs, we do have to actually have a lot of permanents that we can run back out and hopefully tap for mana. Midnight Clock is going to be the one I'm showcasing here, although we also have Gilded Lotus and Hedron Archive. Basically, just all those cards that, well, actually tap for mana, get bounced back to hand, and then we can cheese them into play. Just be mana neutral. Midnight Clock also has a pseudo Days Undoing effect after you've dumped a grand total of 36 mana into it. And it kind of just sits around and threatens drawing us 7 cards in a combo deck. But yeah, that's the deck. Blue Eggs and Narset, just a bunch of stuff there. Leyline of Anticipation is also a big part of the deck, just allows us to cast stuff at instant speed, kind of keep our opponents out from attacking under the Flood the River, River of Tears, can't remember, Flood of Tears, close. Dig Through Time to draw a couple of pieces. Yeah, just a bunch of big cards, which Wishing Well is also a really good one to mention for our cheap artifacts. It replaces itself. It's a permanent that has an enter the battlefield effect, and yeah, we're going to be doing blue things. Witching Well is the card. So this actually looks fine. So we get to start off with the Leyline of Anticipation in play. Turn 1 is going to be the Witching Well. Turn 2, Fabled Passage. Turn 3, Midnight Clock. And then we don't really have anything to interact with our opponent here, but the Midnight Clock should actually be representing the ability to draw cards should it go on kind of long. Witching Well is also going to helpfully scry us into something like a Narset or Flood Tears. I'm really going to struggle with the name of that one. Alright, well, there's our Leyline of Anticipation. We'll run out the island, and then this gives all of our cards flash, so at the moment I can just hold the Witching Well. Alright, so looks like we're going to be playing against Control. Hedron Archive is fine. The Dig Through Time just slightly slow. We are going to have 2 mana rocks here. We can actually cast this Dig Through Time, so let's go ahead and put Dig Through Time and the Hedron Archive there. And because they are controlling, can have things like Dovin's Veto, I'm going to be a little bit more inclined to cast things when they're tapped down than the last second possible with the Leyline. Alright, we are mono blue. Get all them islands. Odds of them having exactly Dovin's veto, probably not very high, but if they tap out for anything, we'll just run out our midnight clock, so whatevs, it's good. Ooh, old school Zendikar Island. I like. A lot of people like the Cup Island. I was never really big on the Cup Island. Teferi. Alright, that makes the ley line a little bad, but we'll get our clock out. We'll go ahead and run out the Hedron Archive. We actually are 1 mana off from being able to crack the well next turn. But if we find the Flood of Tears, we can... Okay. Yeah, honestly, that's fine. Ooh, that's actually super good. Yeah, I think we just run the clock back out. Like, opponent represented that they're kind of afraid of it. And because they do have bounce effects, I think I'm going to leave the island untapped. I think they're a little afraid of this midnight clock. We cannot... Teferi makes magic unfun and Hearthstone-y, so... Alright, Gilded Lotus is not needed. Golden Egg actually gives us another permanent. And it also draws us a card. Opponent's not pressuring our life total here, but we do need to start making some progress. They're probably getting a little bit closer to being able to, like, big Teferi. Okay. Interesting. Well then. Guess we'll just Hedron Archive. It'd be, yeah, they were just ready to counter the first thing that we cast. Sabotage, fine. Can't really interact with it. Then I can't really do anything with the egg yet, so I guess we'll pass on back to opponent. The midnight clock's just going to continue ticking up. I would assume that opponent's planning on getting Teferi up to 4 and then bouncing the clock again. Azorius Charm to draw a card. And they shock that into play, which reeks of another counter spell, but we're going to be just using the Golden Egg here. Gyre Reach is actually super good with Narset, but running this out will tell them exactly what we're doing. They can probably assume that we are doing something with Narset, given how our hand's shaping up, or our play is shaping up. There's the Flood of Tears. So... Alright, well, I think that's our plan for next turn. I currently have 4 mana. I'm 2 mana off of Dig Through Time. Looks like we're just passing, and we'll put another counter on the midnight clock. We are threatening to put 2 counters on the following turn, so we're going to be at 6 at this end step, 7 at our upkeep. It'll go up to 9. Yeah, we're just a little short from doing something to this Teferi. Yeah, that's fine. You can have the counter spell or the draw card in Gideon. Honestly, neither matter to us. Opponent took the counter spell. Okay, in hindsight, I'm actually going to draw 2. If we find Omniscience, we basically win here. That's pretty good too. So let's see. Definitely playing the island. I can put 2 counters on this, but they just bounce it. They currently do not have counter magic up. I can Flood of Tears, bounce the Planeswalkers, and then drop in the Leyline of Anticipation. Is that good enough? I'll end up having 2 mana left over. So it'd just be the 2 Witching Wells or the Golden Egg. As long as opponent actually doesn't have mana open here, I think I'm going to look for Days Undoing. No Days Undoing. Alright, well... Oh, that was a mistake. I actually should have Witching Welled first because it would have gotten me 2 cards deeper If I cast the Switching Well here and I find Days Undoing, it would have been a huge mistake. Okay, well, I'm actually pretty set on lands, so I think we're just going to continue digging. Yep, makes the most sense to me. There's an Omniscience and a Days Undoing. I actually want the Omniscience first, so let's do that. And now our opponent won't be able to draw. They probably are priced into bouncing the Midnight Clock with Teferi. You get the counterspell or the 2 lands? Opponent took the 2 lands. So they do have the Squirrel counterspell here. Oh, and they're just on Big Teferi? Okay. Yeah, that's fine. We're actually going to be able to use this Dig Through Time to pick up Narset and the Days Undoing, and so we get to go balls to the wall here. They discard to hand size. Oh, that doesn't seem right at all. Like, not at all. Okay, well, they're tapped out, so I suppose we'll just pretty much win the game here. So, Flood of Tears, return all non-land permanents. Because we're picking up 4 non-artifacts, we get to put Omniscience into play. That means both their Planeswalkers go to their hand. I don't really care at this moment. We're going to put Omniscience into play. With Omniscience, we're going to cast the Leyline of Anticipation. We can go ahead and cast the Midnight Clock because it's free. Golden Egg is fine. It's going to draw us our Days Undoing, which we're not really ready for yet. I know I want to dig through time here and pick up at least the Narset, so may as well grab her and, sure, Gilded Lotus. Any order. Run out our Gilded Lotus. We get to Narset. The scries here don't matter, so I'm just going to keep both on top. Put on top, put on top. Then we do have the Narset out. Oh, actually, we do have to cast it during our turn. I was going to say let's wait until opponents, but they did keep the Sabotage. So we'll just go ahead and Days Undoing and draw 7. Opponent will draw 1, and yeah, it's over. You can't play control when your opponent has this kind of a board state. We weren't going to win yet, but we were going to win. Mystical Dispute comes in, just free cheap counter spells. Trims. Nexus of Fate probably isn't going to be a good win condition here. Jace, after seeing their Gideon of the Trials, I'm not very excited about, but I think that we have to keep that just in case for some reason they bring in Leylines. Aether Gust can hit red or green. They're Azoria, so that doesn't really matter. The Scrabbling Claws are in here as incidental graveyard hate, and they also allow us to actually filter out our Fabled Passages after a Days Undoing. So we Fabled Passage, then we exile it from our yard, and then that way when we Days Undoing, we won't draw into more lands. Navigator's Compass is probably a little bit slow here, but we do need to keep a non-zero number of these to be eggs. Like, this entire column is just to be 4 permanents to bounce up with the Flood of Tears. The Midnight Clock is actually a really good threat here because it's a mana rock that our opponent has to interact with. They ended up bouncing it twice with Teferi, and that really just goes to show you how bad it is for them. Gilded Lotus can just get countered at 5 mana. Yes, it generates mana, but it's probably not good enough. The Aetherflux Reservoir is a good win condition. Let's take out 1 Compass. 10 permanents and probably having our ley lines in that pile as well is probably fine. Like, in all reality, these are all permanents that should probably be in play before a Flood of Tears. So just 1 more cut. Maybe it's the Days Undoing. We have to have a Narset out for that to actually do anything. It's either that or probably a Flood of Tears, and that can't be right. So yeah, let's just trim a Days Undoing. We just have some good things that we can pull in here. So, may as well ride it. Okay, this is Leyline into Well, Scry, into hopefully at least 1 more land. This just looks so odd, but I know we need it. I'd love to actually find the clock. Midnight Clock. But yeah, this is fine. This is all playable cards, and anytime you can get a leyline into play for free is great. Little surprised the opponent never bounces with Teferi. I guess it really didn't matter with Teferi out, but still seems like a pretty good card to try to set up. No, it is a little awkward here with the Scry and the Fabled Passage, but I have to do the sequencing, otherwise I'm not going to be able to Witching Well on one. So it's possible we're not going to be cracking this yet, unless there's only one card I want off the Scry. Because I will know about two, I'll draw one for turn, I'll play the Fabled Passage, and if I want to keep the second one on top, then I'm not going to be able to actually fetch yet. But honestly, my play next turn is probably going to be the Navigator's Compass, so that doesn't matter very much. Wow, we are really far behind on time. Alright, let's scry. Ooh, more permanents. That's fine. I want the well, the claw. They didn't really show us anything delvy. We already have 3 permanents and a mana rock, though. We also have a Narset. Yeah, I think I'm good bottoming that for now. We also might find just another 1-drop off the top at some point in time. Alright, and then because we don't know the rest, we can go ahead and crack the Fabled Passage. Note I'm doing this before the other Witching Well so that my future Scry won't be messed up. I do actually really want to find land off of this guy. Mystic Sanctuary is kind of an awkward land, but I do want it. I also think I want the Mystical Dispute. My opponent's going to be dropping the 3-mana Teferi this turn if they have it, which is going to make the Dispute bad, though. I would have needed this last turn. So I'm just going to put it to the bottom, assuming that they're running the full copies of Teferi, just because it really invalidates so much of what Magic is trying to do as a game. Yep. That's Sadness Incarnate. And they plussed. Alright, well that's fine. They don't have any 3 or more other islands. Unfortunate. Okay, gain some life. Ship it back. Man, they're really ticking up that Teferi. And the 4 mana up makes me think that they just have everything in the world going on. If I'm getting something countered here, I'd prefer it be the Hedron Archive. Immediate counter again. Yeah, our opponent isn't really thinking through what they want to counter. They just know that they can uncounterably counter things, and they're going for it. I mean, on a certain level I get it, but the Hedron Archive is not a problem for you, friend. Alright, well, they did show us a Dovin's Veto main board, and we've also gone to sideboarding, so I'm really not expecting to be able to come back from this that easily. If Narset gets to stick, which seems pretty improbable at this point, we might have a shot. Yep, they had the veto. Dig Through Time is still a couple of turns away. I can cash out the Wells for 2 cards as long as they don't have a Narset hanging around. But they've had active Big Teferi for a couple of turns, and I only have a Dig Through Time in hand. They're cycling their charms, which they should have even left in. We don't have creatures. It's 2 mana replace itself. Okay, that's probably game then. River of Tears will bounce that and give me back 2 wells, but I won't be able to put anything into play for free, so it's just going to make me get all their stuff back down through counter spells. Yikes. That's an Omniscience. So if they don't have another Dovin's Veto, I might be able to get this to work. If they have the other Dovin's Veto, we're just moving along with our lives. Yeah. That's incredibly disappointing. Okay, so what did we learn? We want Mystic Dispute on 2. Because Teferi really leans itself to unfun games of Magic. And I realize I'm saying that as an Eggs player. Alright, well, let's go ahead and play first. And I am trying to fix an issue with Streamlabs not showing me my chat, but I guess we're not going to get there. This is slightly awkward. It gets me a Narset, and it gives me a Flood of Tears. It's just, I have no interaction. I think I'm going to have to do better than that to win a game against Control. And this isn't that much better than that. I think that's going to be ship a Gilded Lotus then. Yikes. Well, we can get Narset down before Little Teferi, but that likely doesn't matter. Our sequencing is probably going to look a little bit more like Midnight Clock into the Dovin's Veto, and then Narset after Teferi. So 1, 2, 3, 4 permanents I can bounce with this Flood of Tears. So I think I do want the Hedron Archive. I also want the land. So Hedron Archive's coming down next. Then if for some reason I decide I don't want the Hedron Archive, I can always crack the Fabled Passage to shuffle it away. But of course, don't get any new information, so looks like we're hanging on to it. Alright, so either they don't have the Dovin's Veto, or they did opt to not counter the Midnight Clock. I have no idea why they kept this Azorius Charm in. That's a Detention Sphere. You got it. I'm guessing Narset's going to be the better play here. Narset will replace herself, and I'm expecting... whatever. Narset replaces herself. That's all the logic I really need. Oh, they're going to see it, but Mystical Dispute should actually put them a little bit off of tempo and give me a little bit of game to play against them. Pithing Needle. Name Narset? I don't care. She's there so that you don't draw cards when I Daze Undoing. Yeah, a little confused why Pithing Needle came in. It does stop the Witching Well. Yeah. You got it, opponent. Well, we did find the last Narset off the top. Let's see here. I'm expecting Big Teferi at this point because they've had it every game. I don't know if that's actually a correct read or not. They also left up mana for Sabotage. Knowing they left up mana for Sabotage, I'm probably just going to let the Mystic Dispute go off. I can always crack Witching Well at instep if I don't have a good time to fire that off. Like, this draw 2 is actually kind of relevant. Without the Omniscience to put into play for free off the Flood of Tears, and without having the... Okay. That's going to name the Witching Well. But I didn't want to get baited into cracking the well and then not having the mana up for the Mystical Dispute. Besides, Flood of Tears bounces everything. You still scry when you enter, and that will get bounced at some point in time and will actually start to combo off. Just need a little bit more mana first. Alright, so more scry value? Why not? There's the Omniscience. I am 1 permanent away from Flood of Tears being able to put that into play for free, so I also think I do want this Mystical Dispute. I won't have the mana up for... I need to find more mana. So Mystical Dispute to the bottom, Omniscience to the top. We'll go ahead and ship it back. We'll hold up the Mystical Dispute. If they know about it, so they're likely not going to try to drop Big Teferi into it, but they still haven't found their mana for Big Teferi yet. Okay, well, I know they do have... They've at least been representing a Sinister Sabotage, so I think that's going to put me on knowing they have it. If they Big Teferi, they're likely just going to draw a card because tucking my things that are Pithing Needle doesn't matter. Actually, no, they'll tuck Narset because they won't be able to draw off the Teferi. Oh well. We're really close to being able to put this Flood of Tears into play for free. If we rip a land off the top, then we're going to be able to Flood of Tears and hold up Mystical Dispute. And they'll sit their 5th land, so yep, there's Big Teferi. Tuck Snarset, that's fine. Leyline of Anticipation. That's actually not terrible. So still looking to rip a land? So Teferi's going to untap 2 lands, leaving up the Sinister Sabotage. I think I have to let Jace resolve. Yeah. Well, this cantrips. They have 6 cards in hand. You get to choose between 2 lands and an expensive cycler. I should have put the island with the expensive cycler, though. Okay, shocking that into play represents 4 mana. Not exactly sure why they want to represent 4 mana, but maybe they wanted to hold up. If they have 2 Dovin's Vetoes. I can't really do that in a good way, but we do have things with flash. So I think what I want to do is give it over to my opponent. I can, if they activate Teferi to draw, I'll flash in the Hedron Archive and then flash in Narset. That should leave me up enough for Mystical Dispute. Actually, did they just tap out of Squirrel? I think I just am taking a bait into a Dovin's Veto. Nope, can't do it. With 1 more land, I have backup. Okay. This is where we put in Narset. It'll stop them from drawing for the turn. This also will probably bait out a counterspell. They're going to draw a card in response. Okay, you got it. Yeah, no idea why Azorius Charm stayed in. They kept all of them in. Narset can't be activated, which is why it didn't matter. They have a Pithing Needle on her. And then I think I do want to counter this. Nope. Because they'll still have up the... Oh, I was supposed to counter that just because they wouldn't be able to... I'm not able to cast things now. And the Dovin's Veto means this game's likely over. They even did it while I was floating all this mana. That it feels so bad. Like, this just leads to such unfun games of Magic. It's not even close. Now they're going to have 4 mana up with the Dovin's Veto. Wait, no, they took the 2 cards, so they already had the Dovin's Veto? I'm not sure. Okay, well, Narset is still stopping them from drawing additional cards every turn. I can Hedron Archive, that'll leave 4 mana open. I know that they have counterspells, so I probably just need to start running into them, but I'm 2 mana away with this Hedron Archive into play from being able to just cast my Omniscience. Okay, what I'm actually going to do is run out my Hedron Archive here with intent to actually sack it to draw cards. I should have countered that. That is a horrible play mistake from my part, but still just lends itself to such unfun games of Magic. It completely invalidates counter spells, makes interacting with your opponent really hard. Alright, so still plussing up Big Teferi. Okay, that's fine. That's what I wanted to do anyway. Well, there's an additional land. What? Did you not want to buy Lyra? I'm so confused. Alright, well, let's rip the first counterspell out. Yep, there's Dovin's Veto. So we ship it back. I am halfway expecting our opponent to tuck our Narset just to try to draw cards. Oh, look at that, they did it. Alright, and they just tapped out for an Elspeth. So if we actually find another Flood of Tears, we can win on the spot here. Yeah, that is ridiculous to me. Dig through time might do it. I need to find a land and a river. Oh, nope, I'm going to be one shy of that. Well, if they don't have another counter spell, I might be able to get there. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Really at a loss here. I mean, they've had an active Teferi for a while, so it kind of makes sense that they just have all the cards, but... so I think our only out right now is to rip a Flood of Tears off the top. Yep. And they're still concerned about the Narset, which makes me think that they probably don't have the best hand at the moment. Gideon of the Trials means that we would have to go with the Aetherflux Reservoir win at this point. Five cards in hand, though. Multiple mana open. This won't even do it because I need to find a land and a River of Tears. Alright, well... I know I didn't counter Teferi, but it feels so bad losing that match when they're literally keeping in their Azorius Charms to be 2-mana cyclers, and they're like not activating their Planeswalkers in the correct way. There might have been one moment there where you could have said something along the lines of, I should have activated the Witching Well with the Pithing Needle on the stack. That would have drawn me 2 more cards, but if we had, like, they even tapped out against us at one point, and the Flood of Tears would have been able to just bounce all their permanents. We would have been able to put an Omniscience into play. We could have drawn into the Narset combo and completely wiped their board and their hand, tapping out when they're ahead by 4 Planeswalkers and an Angel. Archangel of Thune is not really a good finisher either. Well, what can you do? This hand's not keepable. I do need a non-zero amount of mana. This hand is fine. I'm going to have to tuck the Omniscience and hope to find it later. The Aetherflux Reservoir is probably something that I'm okay to tuck as well. The Omniscience could actually win me the game, where Aetherflux Reservoir is pretty much going to require the Omniscience to go off. Yeah, I think I just talked myself into the Reservoir. I can't really cast either at the moment, but... Witching Well, pretty core in this deck. Probably should have given it a highlight. Yeah, that's fine. I don't want to mess up my scry here. I do have a land for next turn, but I need the Fabled Passage to go off. So how does this actually work? If I draw the Fabled Passage and crack it, I will have an untapped land for Narset. I'm going to be behind a turn. I think I have to bottom this for now and hope to find one off of Narset. We'll keep the Fabled Passage. I think making my turn 3 Narset here is going to be pretty core to having this go off. Castle Garenbrig is basically mono green. That's pretty much the only read you can take from this. So we are a little slow to some of the aggressive decks, which is why our sideboard is mainly Aether Gus, and that's slightly annoying. Aether Spouts and the like. Okay. This would have been River of Tears, and we wouldn't have been able to do anything with it. I really want to cover this at the moment. I don't want them to see that we have it, so we'll go ahead and Narset. We'll take away one card from them next turn. Oh, there's a Days Undoing. Never mind. New plan. Get rid of their hand. Now they're going to have to figure out how to grow the Scavenging Ooze to kill Narset, or they won't have a hand next turn. They also might just commit something like a Steel Leaf Champion to the board, just that they have an actual board state. That's an Oko. Turn that into a 3/3 kill Narset. Cute. It works, though. Man, Oko hitting our Hedron Archive is super, super nasty. Well, I'd really rather they don't see the Gyre Reach yet. Like, it's pretty safe to assume that we have it after seeing the Days Undoing, but really just rather not show it to them yet. If I run out Hedron Archive here, they'll just elk it, and I'll lose the Mana Rock. I won't be able to activate Witching Well. Actually, I just need to bounce 4 non-land permanents. Yeah, I don't think River of Tears or Flood of Tears doesn't care if this is an elk or not. Just need it in play. Yep. Right now they have 2 devotions, so Nykthos is just a colorless land. That does change pretty quickly, though. That's a Jade Light Ranger for a Walking Ballista. Yikes. They bend it? Must be looking for lands here. Interesting, and they didn't want to make that trade? Okay, well, our plan is just Days Undoing. We're currently behind on board, and we can make some better lines when we actually see what our new hand's going to be. This Omniscience, because it's a singleton of the deck, we'll eventually have to find it again, but that's fine. Hey, look at that, we found it again. Still no Flood. So we get a Fabled Passage, drop the egg. Actually, we're probably going to Leyline drop the egg. We'll have 7 mana next turn. 7 mana is Egg, Narset, Days Undoing. We could actually clear their hand again. We just drew them into a ton of gas, and their devotion count actually did get up, so Nykthos is currently online. They can actually get 6 mana off of Castle Garenbrig now. Like, really need to find the Flood of Tears. With 7 mana, the Egg does not actually get us to Flood of Tears. The Midnight Clock kind of does. This will cost 2 mana, put another permanent on the battlefield. I just need to get 1 more into play and find the Flood of Tears. Yikes. Okay, so getting 1 more turn. Elking my clock. So 6 mana. Yikes. I didn't even have food for it yet. Well, the way that our opponent set this up, we actually might get 1 more turn after this. Flood of Tears being my out here, I can block and take 6. I am currently dying, though. Flood of Tears bouncing everything is actually fine. Yeah, let's eat the land. It's 1 less damage, but they have a lot of mana right now, and we're probably going to be looking at running Days Undoing back. Dig through time. Okay, well, first things first, let's get our land out. So we have 6 mana. We can make it 4. The egg is kind of mana neutral, so it'd be 5 and the 3 in the yard to dig through time. We can dig through time at end step. Oko can hit any artifact. Let's see what egg gives us. Because worst case, we crack this for food. Then we have 4, so we can ley line. We're currently looking at taking 8, 9. We're currently looking at 11, so we're dead. I actually have to crack the egg to survive. Any outs here? Dig Through Time is not even castable yet or anymore. Can't activate the Midnight Clock enough. The Leyline of Anticipation won't get us there. So Midnight Clock, Crack the Egg, I think is our only possible line here. Alright, well, refueling our opponent really just gave them what they needed to do to go off, but we had nothing going on. That was probably the play that would have determined this game, was to cast the Days Undoing or not. So if they actually use Nissa on Castle Garenbrig, that's kind of reading that they care more about the mana. Makes sense. So currently taking 13, 14. We'll end up gaining 3 here. Also puts another card in our yard for future dig through time. Okay, probably dead to that. So it's going to be 6, 9, 13, 17, 18. Yep, super dead to that. All right, well, dig through or Days Undoing, pretty good for your opponent. Part of the reason it never really worked. But on the plus side, look at all these cards we get to bring in. We get Aether Gust so that we can just tuck a permanent. We get Thing in the Ice so we can flip their boards. Cuts, it's going to be Aetherflux Reservoir because they're going to have things like Reclamation Sage that they can bring in. Let's see what else. Don't really care about the graveyard. We're going to be playing this one a little bit slower and probably trying to lean on the back of Thing on the Ice a little bit more. Nexus of Fate can get cut. That means that we're only going to be able to win off of Jace, but it's hard for green to interact with just Jace, so that's probably fine. Navigator's Compass will still gain us life. The Egg will gain us life. We can trim a Days Undoing just because we do have multiples of them and they find themselves. Flood of Tears is still one of our better cards. Wow, we have to cut a lot. So going to trim some Gilded Lotuses because if we buy enough time, we will, in fact, get Omniscience into play, so the mana ramp isn't nearly as important. In fact, it's probably just going to be all 3 Gilded Lotuses, and then maybe just bring in 3 Thing in the Ices. It is worth noting that we don't have a lot of ways to actually trigger it. It's just going to be essentially these guys, but it is a 0-4 blocker, which is good against mostly everything in their deck except for the Steelleaf Champion, and to a point Questing Beast. So it's going to be a 0-4 that kind of threatens to flip. Yeah, maybe we'll just do this. Bring in the other Days Undoing. Yeah, that seems right. I could also bring in Mystical Dispute. I don't think it's correct, though. They end up generating a lot of mana, so this is dead really late in the game, and we end up drawing a lot of the same cards over and over. Alright, so we just put Castle Vantress into play. We have a Goose, then we have the Midnight Clock. We have Narset, Ramp, and a Dig. It's not ideal. I would like a Well. And I also like the idea of having Flood guaranteed on our top end, but we haven't seen one in our opening hand very much. But given the amount of permanents we need in play, it's really hard to justify mulliganing with this deck. Alright, there's an Egg. And there's an Omniscience, so getting kind of close. And turn 2 Oko. That's lovely. Okay, well, it's going to be a food pretty soon here. In the meantime, let's go ahead and Narset. Actually, do we want a Narset? Narset just dies to the food token. The Midnight Clock. Narset Find River seems pretty good. Whatever, let's just go for Clock. I want the ramp. And opponent has shown that they're very happy elking our clocks, so if it slows them down just by a turn, that's acceptable in my book. 5 mana next turn. We won't be able to Hedron Archive and Narset. A little too blue intensive. And popping the Rex Sage immediately. Alright, well that hurts. The turn Narset comes down, she's going to die, so it's probably not worth it at this point. Let's go ahead and Golden Egg, see if we can find ourselves into a river. Or anything else is just a permanent. Navigator's Compass is fine here. I guess land's kind of okay. We are under a pretty respectable clock, though. Assuming they elk the Mystic, which probably might not be the correct play depending on what's in their hand. I actually expect Nissa here, but assuming that there's 3 damage coming off of this combination of cards, we're going to be looking at 8 damage. So we're going to be dead in 2 turns. Yikes. Heart of Kirin. Alright. They gotta crew that up with Oko, but it's not damaged yet. Kind of expecting them to either make a food or just elk this. They could also just attack in. They are mostly out of cards in their hand, so... Alright. Yep, they are basically out of action, so River would be just fantastic. I am 1 turn away from casting it, though, and so we're going to be dead. Navigator's Compass is a permanent. Aether Gust can keep us alive here. Thing in the Ice can probably keep us alive. If I Narset into it, then I hit 1 thing. We're currently going to be taking 7, 8, 9, 12, which means we'll need to Navigator's Compass first. Alright, so Hedron Archive it is, then we're probably going to have to crack one of the eggs just to stay alive this turn. We have 7 mana, so we're really close to just pulling it off. Okay, so 9, 11, 15. I think that just puts me to dead. We'll crack it just to be sure. Gain some life. Take 15 die. Yep. Alright, so we draw Narset for turn. Then we'd go... Yeah, I mean, we would have been really close. Either Narset or Dig Through Time would have gotten us there, but that was 2 turns off. Alright, we'll play 1 more, and like I said, I really do reserve the right to drop. I have a Narset Cannon deck that's probably going to do just as poorly that I'd like to test. So we'll go ahead and throw away some of our tickets and play a couple of decks that were meant to be fun. This is actually as close to the perfect hand as I would think we could get. I think I'd want a clock over the Lotus, but the Witching Well will help us draw into things. The Goose will just cantrip. We should hopefully be able to get to 4 lands, and this is likely going to be Aetherworks. Double Witching Well next turn? I think I'd rather Goose and find a land. It is cute, though. Honestly, wouldn't mind casting those, but we have 4 permanents here and the Flood of Tears. I'm looking for Omniscience and a way to get Hedron Archive out. This is looking teamery, so it could also be Pummeler. I think we just die to Pummeler. As much as I don't want to just die to Pummeler, I think we just die to Pummeler. We don't really interact with it at a very quick speed, and most of our sideboard cards don't help much against it. Rogue Refiner. There is always the Infinite Copter deck that was in Standard. But looking more and more like Marvel Works. I think this was in both decks, but Marvel Works like to play them because it was technically a body that could end the game and just card advantage. Yep, that could be the death of us. They currently have 5 energy, so if they can find a way to get rid of a permanent, they will end up getting 6 and can spin, or if they have just like another attune with the Aether or what have you. So I think at the moment we're just going to be on River of Tears, or Flood of Tears. So if I don't rip a land, I have 3, 5 into Lotus. I'll have 4 mana, so going to be close. Gonna be real close. Harness Lightning. So you can pay 0 on this. That just generates everything that they need. Depending on what they cast. Let's turn off auto yields. I don't want them to see my hand if it's an Emrakul. Puzzle Knot. Okay, they whiffed. Oof. If you haven't seen this deck before, because a lot of people were really excited about it when Pioneer was first announced, you can pay 6, look at the top 6, and cast a card without paying their mana cost, but the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So they only ended up hitting the Puzzle Knot, which gained them some life and got them some energy, but obviously not like an Emrakul or an Ulamog or anything. And so with 4 cards in hand, the Narset Days Undoing is actually looking really tempting. If I cast the Gilded Lotus, I'll have 4 mana this turn, which isn't good enough. If I Flood of Tears, I can't put anything into play, and the best thing to put into play would be the Leyline of Anticipation or the Gilded Lotus. So Narset, clear their hand. Hopefully they whiff on energy for a turn and I draw something good. Yeah, probably the best I'm gonna get. So let's go with that line. Go ahead and Narset, and then Rogue Refiner can kill Narset, and I'm not going to be able to keep the card in hand, so let's just Days Undoing now. If they have something like a Harness Lightning, they'd fire it off right there. Looks like they don't. They are going to get 2 cards, though, 1 from the Days Undoing, 1 for their turn. And we are very, very close to being able to do things that can win the game. If they have Emrakul now, we're probably screwed. We'll see what they've got, though. It's not likely that they're going to whiff twice. Actually, we shuffled their deck. It's probably just about as likely that they whiff. Okay, so another Marvel Works. They did this because whenever a permanent is put into the graveyard, they get an energy. And they just get to fire it off again. Yikes. Attune with the Aether. Okay, well, we're dodging some bullets here. Still no Omniscience anywhere. Let's see what we got. Castle Vantress. So how much mana do I actually have? I'll have 5 lands. I actually want Castle Vantress in play. I can Hedron Archive and have 5 mana available, which is not good enough to Flood of Tears. I can cash out the Narset, although if I cash out the Narset, then I won't have 4 permanents in play, which means that if I find Omniscience, I won't be able to do anything with it. I can... this is a problem. They can sack this for 3, so they can sack both of these and fire off the Aetherworks Marvel again. I do not have a Leyline of Anticipation in play right now. This costs 4, so if I Flood of Tears again, then they're going to spend another turn rebuilding, but draw a couple of cards. They won't be able to because of my Narset. So Flood of Tears, put Leyline into play, have 1 mana available. Yikes. Well, this is where we're at. Go ahead and Flood of Tears. Let's put Leyline into play. And oops, was supposed to run out the Witching Well. Okay. Just pitch the other Leyline. Doesn't do anything here. And why not? We're not going to run out both Hedron Archives yet. I guess they can, if they have a land, they can Puzzle Knot and Aetherflux Reservoir. Okay, well, they have the land. Rogue Refiner. Okay, they're not there yet. It's good for me. Crack the Fabled Passage. We are getting to the point where thinning, if we do draw multiple cards over and over again, is actually good for us. Let's go ahead and Narset and look for a Days Undoing. No Days Undoing. Dig through time is going to enable us to find a combo piece, though. I need to get 2 more permanents into play, but I have flash, so I don't think my sequencing here matters at all. I'll just go ahead and ship it over to opponent. They will be able to activate their Aetherworks Marvel again. And they killed Narset, probably because they want to run out their other Rogue Refiner. If they do, I'm just going to put my other Narset into play. Yep. Go on Narset, counter that draw card. They do get the energy and can cast the Aetherworks Marvel, though, so... Whiff again? If they whiff again, they probably don't have enough cards. Yep. Alright, well, I think we have enough of a board state here that I can allow the opponent to control me and not actually get too shafted at the moment. I also have a couple of cantrips, so they're going to have to fire off my dig through time here and not take anything, I believe. Activate Narset, not take anything, and yeah, I think that's all they do. They might even be able to Witching Well and Poorly Scry for me. But then we're just going to get another turn and we can fire off whatever cantrips they didn't and try to go for the win. Opponent's probably looking at our hand like, what is going on? Yikes. Well, they are going to have a 13-13 I have to take care of. They have 2 card types in the yard at the moment. Days Undoing will fix that. That means this is going to cost 11. They have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, so they will fail to find. Do not want to give me that Flood of Tears. I believe you can't pay 50 life if you don't have 50 life. I know that Moto lets you crack a fetch land at 1. They won't let you shock at 1. So you must need to have exactly that amount of life to kill yourself. There's a rule in Magic where you can't pay life that you don't have, so I'd assume that they can't just Aetherflex Reservoir and kill myself. Okay. Well, they egg and cantrip for me. They found the Flood of Tears. Alright, well, regardless of what they do, I'm bouncing everything back to their hand this turn. Because even if they just pass here, then I can run out like Witching Well and then Flood of Tears. They can dig through time and fail to find. That would get rid of a Narset and a Flood of Tears in my bin. Which, I guess they're cycling the egg. That would set me back for at least a moment. It's hard to speculate on the worst way to wreck my hand. Because I don't think opponents figured out what we're trying to do to win yet. Yes, draw me those cards. Well, they can dig through time and fail to find. But if they do that, then... yeah, I mean, I'm still gonna... I might be 1 shy. It's possible I'm 1 shy. Dig through time. They found the Omniscience, so gonna hopefully find a Fabled Passage soon to shuffle my deck. Or a Days Undoing. Do they have to pick? Put 2 of them into your hand. So take the Ley Line, take probably... I guess Mystic Sanctuary, since I already have a land drop. I don't know, it's hard. Our hand just does so much, and they have an Emrakul, but it's probably going away because they accidentally drew us our Flood of Tears. Wait, they left a Flood of Tears in the yard when they did Dig Through Time? I'm so confused. And taking the 1-drop means that we're going to have 4 permanents for Flood of Tears. Oh, to discard to hand size. I guess that makes more sense. Okay. Gilded Lotus. Well, let's take a look at with Narset. Look at that, we found a Flood of Tears. So, drop or two. Actually, the 2/1 drops won't get us there because we need 6. That would be 7. I can get one more permanent. I don't have the Omniscience to put into play yet. So, may as well run out the only land drop I have. We have 7 mana. That would put me at 4, not enough. That would put me at 5, not enough. That'd put me at 5, not enough. Looks like we're probably just going to put this into play. That doesn't really benefit anything at all. What we're going to do is cast the Flood of Tears and then put... Nope, Leyline's not going to go back into play either. So... Okay, yeah, I know what we're going to do. We need to go to our opponent's draw step. Does that matter? Probably not. We have to go to our opponent's begin combat. Then we're going to put the claws on the stack and then the Flood of Tears on the stack. We'll find the Aetherflux Reservoir later. Then that means that they won't get a combat step. There could have been an argument to bounce there. Oh well. So let's put this onto the stack. Hold control, then cast this. It's going to return everything to everybody's hand. Then we're going to have the claws on the table, which is slightly relevant. Just because we need 4 permanents for future Flood of Tears. We're really just looking for a Days Undoing at this point, since we have 3 Flood of Tears in the yard. And let's make you exile something from your yard just because we can. And both of those cards are relevant if we Days Undoing. They both generate a lot of energy for our opponent. Alright, you gonna whiff again? They did find 1 Emrakul. It took 3 activations, but they found 1. Rogue Refiner. Alright. Serving the Conduit. So, lots and lots of mana. Island is fine, gets our count up. The only thing I know for sure is I want to Narset and go digging. There's a Days Undoing, so we can do the Days Undoing whenever we feel like it. We currently have 5 mana, so we can drop this. Oh, we can actually dump a ton of stuff on the table because we'll pay 4, we'll have the Hedron Archive, then we'll have 3 mana for the Days Undoing. That wasn't nearly as good as I thought it was. Gilded Lotus Days Undoing is probably the line. So, Gilded Lotus, we're going to tap this for 3. We get a Days Undoing. Our Narset's going to die, but we're going to have a stock 7 hand with a Flood of Tears in it. So, looking for Omniscience now. We lost our yard for Dig Through Time, but that's alright. Yep, you get a cast with Marvel. That's an Ulamog. That's kind of a problem. Bouncing that back to hand, they currently have 3, 5, 6, 7, 9 mana. If we bounce that back to hand, they're just going to be able to run it back out again. Not great. Not great. Can we find Omniscience? I just want to end this game. Yep, makes sense. Well, there's another Flood of Tears, so that's 8 mana. Gilded Lotus won't really get us there. I'm really afraid Ulamog attacking is going to exile our Omniscience. So really don't want to take that line. I can Dig Through Time, but it's not going to get me very far. If I crack this, I lose a Narset, but get a fresh card. If it's Omniscience, I think that's high enough upside. So... Yep. And Cryo Reach isn't going to be worth it yet. Also, if they attack with this, I just die, so we can Witching Well. Just looking for Omniscience right now. Flood of Tears, bounce everything back up. Then they get a Castic, get 2 of my lands, assuming they find a 10th land drop. And they have a stock 7 hand, so... Yep. Now it's going to cost all of my mana just a Flood of Tears. And I have 6 through my turn. Good enough for me. Alright. No Teferis in this list. We're really close to including them, but don't currently have any. Mystical Dispute to counter the Aetherflux Reservoir is good. Countering Ulamog and Emrakul don't really do it. Aether Gust can hit something green. They had red mana. I don't think we saw anything red, but it can't hit the Reservoir, and most of their threats are going to be colorless. 100% bringing in the Grafdigger's Cage, though. This makes it so that creatures can't be cast from the library. So we're going to go back to trimming, Days Undoing again. We can find them plenty quickly. Gilded Lotus, when we're bringing in this many cards, it's really hard to make these cuts. Gilded Lotus is great for actually comboing up, but we've had a little bit of difficulty casting it. I'm not 100% on this. I do like the Hedron Archives because they can draw, but the Gilded Lotuses are primarily in here so that we can activate things like Witching Well after we get an Omniscience into play. Thing the Ice is too slow. Nexus of Fate's probably too slow. Midnight Clock is also... This has been a great mana rock, and it also threatens a Days Undoing effect for Narset, so might consider putting a third one of these in, but it's just so tight with all these eggs that we have to actually cast. It's really hard to keep them on the battlefield and also prevent ourselves from dying. If we're bringing in the Grafdigger's Cages, the Compasses can probably go, and that looks kind of solid. We need the Jace to win. We need the Omniscience pretty much to win. We can win without it, but it's rough. Yeah, that's about as good as it's going to get. Just really looking for a Grafdigger's Cage. This is a pretty solid Mystical Dispute, and it lets us Leyline. So on turn 3, we can hold up the Mystical Dispute for the Aetherflux or for the Marvel, or we can Narset in step. Yeah, words are hard. Yeah, we'll hang on to this. Overall, not amazing, but good enough. Leyline goes into play. Our opponent keeps 7. Get a Fabled Passage just because it's going to enter tapped, and Minor Lethans our deck. The claws are in here so that we can remove the Fabled Passages. I know I already mentioned that this video, but by the time that we start Days Undoing and seeing multiple cards, the Fabled Passages just kind of get in the way. We also hit enough mana that we can routinely go off. Man, this would have been great last game if we could have kept it in play. I think we actually did start with 1, but we had to bounce it. Alright, opponent. Tilty Upkeep Stop is set. Thank you. It's not like we can do anything shenanigan-y with that. Opponent also knows we're mono blue. We drew 7 cards multiple times. Tune with the Aether. Really good card for their deck. Really surprised that they printed the Astrolabe after Attune with Aether had to get banned. Like, they are very similar in what they try to do. So they can still put the thing out, so I'm going to wait for them to try to commit to it. If they don't, I can just put Narset into play. Drawing the second one, it might have been correct to actually put Narset out in Activator, since this wouldn't be able to kill it anyway. Okay, serve into the Conduit. They're just ramping up. Seems fine. Run out our Narset. Okay, cute. Island is fine here. If I run out my own Narset, there's a pretty decent chance that she just dies. I think I'd prefer to cast Narset in response to a Rogue Refiner. And if I down tick, it will just die. If they also make their fourth land drop and just try to slam a Marvel, I'd really, really prefer to just Mystical Dispute it. Wow. All the Mystical Disputes. This is a bad card for us to put back into the deck. Did I take the claws out? Really? That's what you did post-board, opponent? Okay, well, we still have the claws, so we can start forcing them to eat their counter spells. Their deck slowed down a ton from what I can see. I kind of want the land just because I can't River of Tears without it. We also don't have permanence on our hand. None of that's good. Alright, I actually think I'm going to bottom this in hopes of finding something that can cantrip, like the Golden Egg. Golden Egg would actually be really good in this board state. And if we whiff, I can just crack the Witching Well next turn. But we are under a lot of pressure here. Alright, well, opponent's hitting all their land drops. Of course, we hit the Flood of Tears. Well, we need 2 more permanents into play and 2 more mana, so something like Hedron Archive would be good, although I'm pretty much forced into cracking the Well this turn, so we're going to need 3 more permanents. Would have been nice if we could have kept a Narset around, but I think opponent's taking this one. Well, there's an egg. And that's a Jace. Alright, well, if we don't find another non-land permanent or a land here, we're done, so... Grafdigger's Cage is a pretty good one. So we go to 2 this turn, and I think we just die. Flood of Tears just costs 1 too much. Alright, show me something big. That's a land. No land pedal. I can sack the egg and stay alive for 1 more turn. But... did I take all the compasses out? I did take all the compasses out. Whatever. Try to Jace. If we... nope, can't draw into a land to crack the egg. I thought that was the only line we could take to win, but we're pretty much just dead here. Nothing I can do. I could hit the claws. Probably doesn't seem relevant. Yeah, we hit the land. If we hit the land there and could have cracked the egg, next turn we could have Flood of Tears, and, well, we still would have been a land shy. Alright, well, that's the game. So, currently 0-3. We did have a couple of games where this deck really showed what it could do, but I don't really think that we want to continue playing this one. It's just a little bit too slow. It really reminds me of Ad Nauseam in Modern while it was speeding up. It was a cute deck that a lot of people wanted to play, but it was just a little too slow. We do have a couple of people in chat. How are we feeling? Do we want to go to Narset Cannon? Basically using Vessel of Volatility or Chandra or Hedron Archive to put Narset and Leiden Master out and take infinite turns. You guys feeling that, or should we just call it a night here? We have been going for an hour and a half already. Any thoughts? Alright, well, if nobody has any thoughts, I guess we can just go ahead and do the wrap-up. Dog's whining, and we have been going for a bit here. So, Narset Blue Eggs. I've kind of already covered it. If we get a couple of egg-like devices that enter the battlefield, actually cause a permanent to stick around, if we get something similar to Flood of Tears, they even cost just like 1 less mana, we'll probably be in a really good spot. Gilded Lotus doesn't really ramp us fast enough for the current metagame. If you're playing a little bit slower, something a little more kitchen table-y, Gilded Lotus actually works. I was doing a lot of the free queues with this deck while I was playtesting it, and a lot of the decks like Knights and Vamps and stuff like that, I was able to have a lot of game against, but there were some real problems with the people playing mono green, as we saw when we were playing against Oko. Like, they can just turn 2 Oko and start elking all of our mana ramp, and we aren't able to get up to Flood of Tears by the time that like Nissa is coming down and just ruining our life. I do think that this deck has some legs, though. I do think if Eggs is an archetype that you like to play, and I know there's a million people out there who like to play it, then by all means, sleeve it up. Gaia Reach Narset is still a good lock combo. Without cards like Commandeer, it is a little bit too cute, is probably the right word, slow. If we don't actually have a Narset out when we Days Undo, and we do get to see things like just giving our opponent 7 cards and the next turn they empty their hand because they are optimized to do that. Um, just a couple of thoughts. Dig Through Time, because we are a combo deck, is probably better than Treasure Cruise, although I would try to sleeve up Treasure Cruise in that slot. The double blue is actually a real tax, and I believe there are 2 moments this league where I could have cast a Treasure Cruise but not a Dig Through Time. You also have to keep track of your graveyard. The Scrabbling Claws and the Compasses as 1-drops work for what the deck is intending to do, but not necessarily what um, benefits more than just having a permanent. Um, could also see an argument for splashing white for Teferi. Having 3 mana Teferi just to make sure your opponent can't interact with you seems like it'd also be pretty good, but just some random thoughts. I'm thirteene. I play a bunch of fun decks for Squirrel Dealer. Feel free to hop online and check out our YouTube page. We have a ton of content up there, just playing a bunch of different fun archetypes and decks with a bunch of fun ofs. I thoroughly think that you should have fun while playing Magic, or you probably shouldn't be doing it in your free time as a hobby. But thanks for sticking around, guys. Sorry this one didn't work out, but kind of expected it going in. And I will see you all Wednesday. We have a couple of different options for Wednesday. We'll probably play it by ear, but it's probably either going to be Boros Tokens, Turbo Jeskai Ascendancy, or Nahiri Mardu Control. We could also try Narset Cannon. In the past and modern, before Faithless Looting got banned, we always had a Bell and Cannon mentality where we were ready to just play a couple of fun games and try to explosively kill our opponent. I don't think this deck is that fast, but might be giving that a shot in the future because the deck is ready to go and about as ready as I think I'll get it. But thanks for hanging around. Have a good one, everyone.